So, who would have guessed that Cuphead is a difficult game? In fact, it's probably the most difficult game I've played since getting over it with Bennett fucking Foddy. But unlike that masterpiece of bullshit, this one's difficulty doesn't come from counterintuitive controls that feel like literally dragging a limbless body up a mountain, but instead relies on the player expertly using the very precise and snappy controls to avoid every and all dangers the game constantly throws at you. Which is a very different approach to game design, but surprisingly, the effect, in many ways, is very much the same. You just have to try and try again until you figure out how to overcome any given obstacle. And in this game, those obstacles are mostly bosses, all of which are very well designed and usually don't resort to horseshit mechanics that result in unavoidable death, but instead use somewhat fair mechanics that makes it feel like you taking damage was your fault and it could have been avoided if you'd been quicker and more accurate. That being said, from time to time you do get unlucky with the timing of several different abilities that conspire against you, and it's virtually impossible not to take damage. And while the game does feel mostly fair, it's still brutally difficult, especially for someone who's rapidly approaching middle age and apparently has the reflexes of a donkey on ketamine. That didn't stop me from progressing through the game though. It only meant that it took far more attempts to get past most bosses than I found to be enjoyable, sometimes taking over 2 hours just to defeat one single boss, meaning it started to get very tedious about halfway through the game. Now, I am confident I could have beaten the game, simply given enough time and repeated attempts, dying to the same mechanics I already understood but still didn't manage to avoid. However, I ultimately decided that smashing my head against the wall for another 10 plus hours was probably not a productive or all that enjoyable way to spend my evenings, so I eventually called it quits. But that's not really because of any fault in the game itself, as it is very well designed and mostly fair, but because it's probably not a game designed for me. With that being said though, everything from the art style to the animation and the music is very much like the gameplay, just top notch. Excellent stuff all around. 9 out of 10 broken controllers.